She didn't recognize him at all at first. Owen Grayson, the powerful CEO of the Everyday Save supermarket chain, was pushing a battered floor scrubber in a faded janitor's uniform, silently blending in with the other employees. The cold, fluorescent lights washed over the gleaming floor, and amid the steady hum of the machine, he suddenly caught a choked, anguished sound coming from the checkout area, a heart-wrenching, tightly held back sob. Owen gently switched off the scrubber, careful not to make a sound. He edged closer, trying to pinpoint where the noise was coming from. Behind checkout lane number 3, concealed by a tall shelf stacked with candy bars and magazines, a young black woman sat hunched on a small stool, her face buried in her hands. Her long curls were tied back, and her employee headset still hung loosely around her neck, as if she hadn't even had the strength to take it off. He stood silently, chest constricting, as he listened to the fragile, trembling whispers of her tears. "I've really tried, Auntie. You know I can't miss another shift. If I do, they'll cut my hours. I still haven't paid the electric bill, and now they're warning me about eviction. What am I supposed to do?" Silence fell again. Owen felt the weight bearing down on her, as heavy as the stark lights overhead. "No, I haven't said anything to them. What good would it do? All they care about is flexibility, but how is it flexible to have to be on call day and night, or you're worthless?" Another agonizing pause. She continued through her sobs. "You know, here there are only 2 options: vanish into thin air or disappear forever. Mom's gone. I've lost the house. Now I don't even know what I'm fighting for. If only someone, just once, would see me, understand how much I'm hurting. Just once. Even if it was the CEO who wrote these cold policies." She let out a bitter laugh and wiped her eyes. "But you know how it is. No one like that ever comes through these doors. People like them don't care about checkout clerks, especially not a poor black girl like me." Owen stood perfectly still, gripping the handle of the floor scrubber. She had no idea the man she was talking about was only a few feet away. Her words felt like knives twisting in his chest, and he winced at their truth. For years, he'd been proud of building a vast company, hundreds of stores, thousands of employees nationwide. But today, he realized he had inadvertently created a heartless machine, one that crushed the dreams and dignity of workers like the young woman before him. He remembered the meeting months ago at headquarters when consultants pitched him the flexible scheduling policy. He'd signed off on it without a second thought, drawn in by the glossy charts and numbers, oblivious to the fact that he was signing away the hope of people like the cashier in front of him. She remained on that stool, one hand clutching her phone, the other wrapped around her trembling frame. He could just make out her name on the battered name tag pinned to her uniform, Jasmine Brooks, a name he knew he would never forget. After a moment, Jasmine hurriedly wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and stood. She straightened her uniform, adjusted her headset, and forced a calm expression before returning to her station. From a distance, she greeted customers with her usual friendly smile, as if nothing had happened, as if those tears had never fallen. But Owen was different now. What he'd witnessed moments ago made one thing crystal clear. He could no longer turn away from the pain of his own employees. He had just heard something no leader ever wants to hear. The silent, powerless cry of a loyal, vulnerable worker, hurt by the very system he'd been so proud to build. At that moment, he didn't know exactly what he would do next. But Owen Grayson was certain of one thing. He could never ignore people like Jasmine Brooks again, because right now, nothing mattered more than making amends for the wrong he'd done. And he understood that this journey was only beginning. When Jasmine returned to her checkout lane, the young woman's smile was mechanical and forced. Owen remained motionless at a distance, far enough to go unnoticed, but close enough to observe. The scrubber lay silent beside him, but Owen's mind was racing. The image of Jasmine bowing her head to hide her tears felt like a punch to his chest. Guilt burned in him like a smoldering ember, inching its way into his heart, making it impossible to look away from this black woman struggling under the cold, unfeeling rules he himself had set. Owen replayed Jasmine's tear, choked words in his mind. "Mom's gone. My home's gone. I don't even know what I'm fighting for anymore." Those words echoed relentlessly, an unspoken judgment of him. He felt the weight of 1,000 questions screaming inside. How did things ever get this bad? Why was a dedicated worker like Jasmine being driven to the brink by policies he once thought brilliant? Unbidden, his memory drifted back more than 20 years to when Everyday Save was just a small store tucked into a worn, down corner of Dayton, Ohio. Back then, Owen Grayson was a young, passionate man with a dream of running a friendly neighborhood market that treated its workers like a big family. He remembered every face at the registers. Anna with her bright smile, Robert always cracking jokes, Mary who rose before dawn each day to stock the shelves. He knew the struggles each of his employees faced. He stayed late during inventory counts alongside them and helped cover shifts when someone had a family emergency. He believed fiercely that a company's strength lay in how it cared for ordinary workers, people society all too easily forgot. But as the business expanded, everything changed. Small stores popped up everywhere, and Everyday Save's reputation and its bottom line grew rapidly. Pressure mounted to run faster, leaner, and more profitably. Owen no longer saw his cashiers face to face. Management was handed over to outside consultants and professional managers, armed with fancy business degrees. Board meetings fixated on charts, metrics, performance, and profit. Employees became nothing more than numbers on cold, impersonal HR reports. He remembered one such meeting clearly, when a consultant named David Mitchell presented the flexible scheduling policy. Mitchell had painted it as a brilliant idea. This will give managers precise control over labor efficiency and optimize productivity. The more hours you work, the more shifts you'll get. Those with fewer hours will see automatic cuts, so unexpected absences won't derail operations. Owen signed off on the policy without a second thought. To him, it was just another page of persuasive figures. He never imagined the fallout, that an employee needing time off to care for a sick loved one would be immediately penalized with reduced hours. They'd be labeled inflexible, and bit by bit, the company would push them into situations like Jasmine's, losing everything simply for showing compassion and responsibility. Back in the present, Owen watched Jasmine diligently scan groceries, her lips curling into a practiced smile, even though her eyes were rimmed with red. Nearby, the store manager, Linda Martin, known for her strictness, stood watching Jasmine with a cold, disapproving glare. Owen immediately recognized the wariness and bias in Linda's expression, as if Jasmine were a nuisance interfering with her vision of perfect efficiency. He moved slightly closer to catch Linda's muffled words to a young assistant manager. "Jasmine takes another day off, and I'll cut all her hours. We don't have room for irresponsible workers. I don't care if her mother just died. We're running a business, not a charity." Those heartless words choked Owen. He felt fury rise in him, but even more a deep shame, for he realized he had unknowingly empowered people like Linda, managers who placed profit above everything, even humanity. He looked back at Jasmine. She was still working with quiet determination, burying her pain deep inside. Though invisible to most, her suffering was as real to Owen now as any wound he'd ever known. He took a slow, steady breath, resolve hardening in him. He could not, would not, let Jasmine or any other worker suffer under these policies any longer. No matter the cost, he would do everything in his power to right this wrong. This was no longer a question of profit, it was a question of people, and Owen knew he would have to confront the very wound he had helped create with the same hands that had built the Everyday Save empire. He understood now that the real fight was just beginning, and he was ready to step into it. A fight for justice, for compassion, for workers like Jasmine Brooks. Owen stepped slowly out of the store, the faded janitor's smock feeling heavier on his shoulders than ever. Linda Martin's callous words and her unconcerned, prejudiced look toward Jasmine haunted him, stirring up a pain from a past he had long since forgotten. As he crossed the threshold of the glass doors, Jasmine's image remained vivid in Owen's mind. Her slight frame trembling with each choke of sobs, the desperate eyes she hid behind a forced smile whenever a customer approached. And he, the head of the entire corporation, now realized more clearly than ever that he hadn't merely witnessed her suffering by accident. He had directly caused it. Night was falling over the small town of Lincoln. Owen's steps felt leaden as he walked down the empty street, the weak streetlights casting long shadows beneath his feet. Suddenly, his memories carried him back more than 20 years to that humble little store on a worn corner of Dayton, Ohio, where he launched his dream with only a few bare shelves and boundless ambition. Back then, Owen Grayson wasn't the powerful CEO poring over thick financial reports in a sleek office. He was a young man with bright, hopeful eyes, passion and determination burning in his heart. Every morning he was the first to unlock the doors, pull back the dusty curtains, and unpack the day's shipments. Those days were hard but joyful. He knew every regular customer by name, each employee's personal story, even the small details like who had just welcomed a new baby or who was struggling with illness. That first Everyday Save had no soulless data sheets, no cold policies, no high-priced consultants with polished smiles who didn't really know any of their staff. There were only ordinary people like Anna, the single mom who sometimes had to leave early to care for her child, Robert, the young man dreaming of becoming a teacher, and Mary, who woke at 4 a.m. to bake fresh goods for everyone in the store. They were part of the little family Owen cherished. Whenever someone hit hard times, Owen was the first there to help. When Robert needed tuition money, Owen didn't hesitate to dip into the store's funds and say, "Go ahead and study. I believe in you." When Anna's daughter fell gravely ill, he drove them to the hospital in his old car and sat outside the room through the long night, comforting Anna through her tears. Compassion and genuine care were the foundation that helped that tiny store grow. Customers shopped at Everyday Save not just for the fair prices or variety, but because they felt the warmth and sincerity of the owner and his friendly team. But as time went on, rapid growth steered the business down a different path. Owen was swept up in expansion and ambition. New stores opened in city after city, and managing them all became too much for one man. The consultants arrived, promising to make operations more efficient and professional. Bit by bit, Owen handed over decision-making to them, trusting that was the best way to sustain and grow the empire he had built. At first, he was pleased to see soaring revenue numbers. Those glossy financial reports and grand strategy meetings convinced him he was on the right track. But gradually, he grew distant from the frontline workers he once knew like family. They became impersonal codes on spreadsheets, their performance measured by cold KPIs. And so, before he knew it, Owen failed to see that he had lost the most important thing he ever built: his own empathy and kindness toward everyday workers. Management decisions were now based on heartless calculations devised by consultants like David Mitchell, always impeccably dressed, always polite, but never listening to a single employee's real story. Unbidden, Owen replayed the last meeting in his mind, when David had enthusiastically presented the flexible scheduling policy with charts and productivity analyses to persuade him to sign off. He'd taken it at face value as the optimal way to run a large company. But now, faced with Jasmine's tears, Owen felt the painful truth. In pursuing swift growth, he had sacrificed the passionate, caring person he once was. Owen halted on the dim street and lifted his gaze to the distant stars. He wondered if it was even possible to return, to reclaim the man he used to be, and to heal the deep wounds he'd inflicted on Jasmine and so many others. A fierce resolve took root in his heart. He would do everything within his power to restore the compassion and kindness that once defined everyday save. To save Jasmine, to save the company, and to save his own soul. In that moment, Owen Grayson understood that he must confront the truth he'd long ignored, and that he alone must stand against the cold system he had unwittingly created. At dawn the next morning, Owen arrived at the Everyday Save store, still wearing his frayed, faded janitor's uniform and a cap pulled low over his face. After a sleepless night, he knew he could not walk away, could not pretend he had seen nothing. Quietly pushing the bulky floor scrubber, he made his way toward the checkout area, his eyes searching for that familiar, slight figure among the long rows of registers. From across the room he spotted Jasmine. She looked even more hollowed out than the day before, dark circles under her scant makeup. Yet she stood there, forcing a warm smile for customers approaching her till. Owen moved slowly along a nearby aisle, watching her every gesture, every glance. His heart clenched as he recognized that smile, the smile of someone desperately hiding her despair, so all too common now for this young woman. When the store grew quieter, Owen saw Jasmine sneaking a glance at her phone propped beside the register. Her brow furrowed, hand trembling as she picked it up. From where he stood, he could just make out a line of bold red text on the screen. Final warning. Rent is overdue. If payment is not received within 48 hours, eviction proceedings will begin. Jasmine covered her mouth with one hand, eyes wide with panic, then scrambled to lock her screen and tuck the phone back as if afraid someone might notice. She drew in a deep breath, steeled herself, and turned back with a fragile smile to serve the next customer. In that moment, Owen felt as though an invisible hand gripped his heart. Helpless, he watched this dedicated employee caught in a spiral of desperation and realized that he, with a single cold signature, had pushed Jasmine into this situation. The flexible scheduling policy he once thought brilliant had become a machine for grinding down the very people who needed help. Unable to quell his curiosity or his guilt, Owen waited for Jasmine to slip away for her break, then slipped over to the employee login terminal. With just a few keystrokes, nothing difficult for a CEO, Jasmine Brooks's details appeared on the screen. Stark, clinical, unfeeling. The flashing numbers stunned him. Only weeks ago, Jasmine had been scheduled for over 30 hours a week, but after taking 2 days off to care for her dying mother, the system had flagged her as inflexible and gradually cut her hours down to just 10 per week. Owen went numb, the realization crashing over him that the profit-driven spreadsheets he had so blithely approved had wreaked real, brutal consequences, threatening this innocent young woman with eviction and ruin. "What are you doing?" A woman's suspicious voice beside him made him start. It was Linda Martin, the stern store manager he'd seen yesterday. She stared at him with narrowed eyes, lips pressed tight, as if he'd crossed into forbidden territory. "Sorry, I was just cleaning up here," Owen stammered, feigning a wipe of the keyboard. Linda's gaze didn't waver, cold with contempt. "I've noticed you hanging around here too much. If you're done, move along. We didn't hire you to snoop on our internal operations." She watched him retreat with an air of authority and arrogance, then whispered to a nearby assistant, "Lately, they're hiring the strangest janitors. Somebody needs to screen them better." From behind the shelving, Owen realized that Linda was a key enforcer of this merciless policy, using flexible scheduling to weed out any problematic employees, all without bearing personal responsibility. And worst of all, she truly believed she was right, that she was running a model store in the Everyday Save system. That afternoon, Owen watched Jasmine again from a distance as she entered the break room, collapsing into a corner. Exhausted and shocked. She covered her face and her shoulders shook. This time, she could not hold back the tears. Yet, the moment a coworker walked in, she hurriedly wiped her eyes, forcing a weak smile and saying she was fine. Seeing Jasmine so broken filled Owen with helpless rage at the ruthless truth. Hard-working employees like her were being crushed by the cold system he once proudly built. His heart pounded fiercely. He could no longer deny it. He was ultimately responsible for the pain Jasmine endured. And in that instant, he resolved that it was time to stand up and make things right, no matter the cost. That evening, after the last lights in the Everyday Save store had gone dark, Owen sat in silence at the small desk in his hotel room, the cold blue glow of his laptop screen tracing lines of worry across his face. Jasmine's forced smile haunted him like a brutal reminder of the terrible fallout his once perfect management system had caused. Unable to bear it any longer, Owen opened the company's HR dashboard to investigate. A long list of names and profiles appeared, each flagged as hours reduced or marked inflexible. His heart sank as he noticed the pattern. Most were employees of color or people facing serious personal hardships. He clicked through each file, and behind every cold stat lay a heartbreaking story. Alicia Turner, a black employee renowned for her reliability, had lost more than half her hours after taking a single day off to care for her sick child. Miguel Sanchez, a Latino team member, was labeled unstable when he had to rush home after his wife's accident. The tales went on endlessly, revealing the grim truth. The automated system wasn't just impersonal. It was being weaponized by managers like Linda Martin to purge anyone they deemed inconvenient. Owen spotted an internal memo from Linda to her assistants. If an employee takes more than 2 days off in a month, mark them as unstable. We don't need personal excuses dragging down store performance. Remember, this is Everyday Save, not a charity. Her words sent a chill through him. He realized he'd inadvertently unleashed a monster, one that heartless managers could use to squeeze workers out without ever having to fire them outright. Instead, they quietly strangled their hours, forcing people to quit in despair and shame. A tsunami of anger and shame washed over Owen, but he knew guilt alone wouldn't suffice. He had to act immediately to confront the damage he'd done. The next morning, Owen returned to Everyday Save in his battered janitor's uniform. This time, he looked for Jasmine. Mid-shift, he saw her slip into the break room, pale and hollow-eyed. He quietly joined her, pretending to tidy the area around her small table where she sipped instant coffee. "Long night last night?" Owen ventured, keeping his tone casual. Startled, Jasmine glanced up and offered a strained but polite smile. "It's okay, work's always busy." Pulling up a chair, Owen leaned in with genuine concern. I've been here a few days and heard a lot. Management seems pretty strict, huh? Jasmine hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, but it's not the store, it's the company policy. They tout it as flexible and great, but it's actually the opposite. How so? Owen asked, his voice steady despite the guilt knotting his stomach. She looked down at her coffee, fingers twisting around the cup. They say flexible hours make things convenient. In reality, if you can't work whenever they demand, even on your day off or during a family emergency, they mark you disposable. Then the system starts cutting your hours bit by bit until you can't survive. Owen was silent, each word stabbing at his heart. That's awful, he whispered. Jasmine managed a sad, bitter smile. It is. My mom passed away a few weeks ago. I took 2 days off to be with her. Just 2 days. That was enough for the system to tag me as inflexible. Now, I only get a few hours each week. I can't pay rent. The power's been cut. I don't know how much longer I can keep going. Her voice trembled. And the worst part? They never tell you directly. They just quietly slash your hours, pushing you to quit on your own. They don't fire you, but they make you feel so worthless you leave. That's the scariest thing. Owen saw the pain in her eyes and knew he could no longer delay. Jasmine didn't yet know the man she was talking to was the CEO responsible for her hardship, but Owen understood it was time to step forward and face the brutal reality he'd unwittingly created. Because now, Owen Grayson knew he could no longer stand by while people like Jasmine were crushed by a cold, unfeeling system. He had to act immediately and without hesitation to make things right, no matter the cost. Jasmine's story seemed to freeze the air around them. Owen sat silent across from the young woman, his heart pounding so heavily it felt as though every word she'd just spoken pierced the wound he had inflicted on his own soul. Jasmine kept her head bowed, fingers unconsciously gripping the cold coffee mug. Her eyes held a weary resignation, as if she'd grown accustomed to nobody truly caring about her story anymore. Owen cleared his throat softly, striving to break the tension. He looked at her with genuine compassion. Why do you keep enduring this when they treat you so poorly? I know there are other places in town that treat employees better. Jasmine looked up in surprise, clearly not expecting a stray janitor to ask such a question. Then she managed a pained smile. You think I haven't thought of that? But you know, sometimes the only choice we have is to endure. I don't need a dream job or a fantasy salary. I just need a decent workplace. Somewhere I don't feel completely invisible. The word invisible struck Owen like a crushing blow. Jasmine had no idea the man before her was Owen Grayson, the very CEO who had signed the cold policy that was burying her and countless others. Yet her sense of invisibility within the system he once trusted so completely drove home the depth of his guilt. Why do you say you're invisible? Owen asked quietly, his voice thick with pain. Jasmine let out a soft sigh and stared off through the small window. Listen, I've worked here almost 2 years. I've always given my all, never late by even a minute, always polite and cheerful with customers. But the moment I take time off for something truly important to me, they deem me useless. They don't want to know why. They don't care to listen. I'm just a number, a data point in their system. When I become inconvenient, they eliminate me by cutting my hours until I can't survive. To them, I'm nothing, totally invisible. Her voice trembled and her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she swallowed them back. She didn't want to show weakness in front of a stranger. I don't need a luxurious life. I just want a place where I can wake up each day without the fear that they'll strip away more hours. I want a job where I'm treated like a real person, not a soulless statistic." Owen was utterly speechless. Jasmine's words had, for the first time, shown him the stark reality of the grave mistake he had unwittingly created. Each sentence felt like a dagger, peeling away the layers of pride he once had in Everyday Save's success. He had believed the automated management system was the key to growth and efficiency. But now, in that cramped room, through Jasmine's wounded eyes, he saw clearly that he had built a heartless machine that crushed the dreams and dignity of devoted people like her. A moment later, Jasmine stood and forced a faint smile. "I'm sorry. I've probably burdened you enough. Thanks for listening to me complain." "No, thank you," Owen replied earnestly, meeting her gaze with profound gratitude. Jasmine didn't fully grasp what he meant, but nodded politely, then returned to her shift, smiling through her pain, as if their conversation had never happened. That night, Owen returned to his hotel room a changed man. He sat before his computer, red, rimmed eyes from lack of sleep and hands trembling, as he began typing the most important words of his life. An official letter renouncing the flexible scheduling policy he had once championed. In the letter, he forcefully declared that the system had fostered callousness and cruelty, stripping Everyday Save of its humanity and compassion. He didn't merely abandon the policy. He pledged to personally lead the creation of a fairer, more empathetic management system, one that truly listened to every employee. His fingers flew over the keyboard, each sentence measured and resolute. When he finished, he knew this decision would rock the entire corporation, and likely provoke fierce resistance from those who benefited under the old regime. But he did not hesitate. Owen Grayson, the man who had unwittingly unleashed an unfeeling system, was now fully aware of his wrongdoing, and he understood that to save people like Jasmine Brooks, it all had to start with this letter, a letter that would change Everyday Save forever. The next morning, the atmosphere at Everyday Save felt different. A sleek black car, one that had never before appeared at this little store, pulled up right at the main entrance. A man stepped out, straightened his polished suit, and walked purposefully toward the front doors. His gaze was calm but resolute, a stark contrast to the weary janitor Jasmine had seen the day before. The automatic glass doors slid open, and Owen Grayson entered, now clearly identified as the CEO of the Everyday Save supermarket chain. For a moment, everything inside the store froze. Cashiers paused mid-transaction, assistant managers halted in confusion, and customers turned to stare at the powerful figure they'd only seen in news photos. Behind Owen stood a handful of senior staff, including Regional Manager Jeffrey Collins. Jeffrey's face went pale with tension, his hands twisting together anxiously. Nearby, Linda Martin stood rigid, as though she'd just witnessed a nightmare in broad daylight. She glanced at Owen for a moment before dropping her eyes, unable to meet the authoritative gaze of her CEO. Owen positioned himself in the center of the store and swept his eyes across every employee. When his gaze settled on Jasmine, she immediately recognized him, even though he looked nothing like the janitor she'd talked to yesterday. Her heart pounded, a rush of panic and bewilderment washing over her. Owen's voice rang out, warm yet commanding. "I want all employees to gather here right now. There are important matters I need to address with you." In an instant, the store was so quiet you could hear every heartbeat. Employees assembled around the CEO they never expected to meet in person. Some whispered anxiously to one another, while others watched Owen with wide-eyed curiosity and admiration. Owen looked to Jasmine and nodded. "Jasmine, please stay here. What I'm about to say pertains directly to you." Jasmine felt her legs go weak, but she drew herself together and stepped forward. Curious and scrutinizing glances from co-workers and managers made her uneasy, yet she also sensed genuine warmth in Owen's eyes. "I want to begin by apologizing to all of you," Owen said, his tone steady and sincere. "Recently, this company has unintentionally caused deep harm to many loyal employees. The flexible scheduling policy, once thought so effective, has become a cold, heartless tool that's suffocated lives. I personally signed off on that policy, and today I stand here to admit that mistake in front of all of you." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. No one expected a powerful CEO to publicly own up to his error in such a modest setting. Linda Martin bowed her head even lower, her face flushed with embarrassment. Owen's gaze softened as he turned back to Jasmine. "Jasmine, yesterday you told me you felt invisible at work. Those words made me realize that we, the leadership of this company, have forgotten the most important thing: compassion and respect for every employee." Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes. She looked up at Owen, feeling truly seen for the first time. Owen continued, his voice growing stronger. "I can't undo the past, but from this moment on, I pledge to restore fairness and empathy at Everyday Save. The flexible scheduling policy is revoked immediately. From today forward, all scheduling decisions will be made by direct managers, based on each worker's individual circumstances." Jeffrey Collins, the regional manager, spoke up hurriedly, concern etched on his face. "But Mr. Grayson, that'll make effective management very difficult. The old system, strict as it was, delivered strong results." "No, Mr. Collins," Owen cut in firmly, eyes steely. "Efficiency cannot justify callousness and injustice. We run a company of real people, not a soulless machine. I will never again allow employees to live in fear." The store fell into a profound silence. Jeffrey lowered his head, no longer daring to argue. Linda stood rigid, her face pale, as she realized the consequences of her actions were coming down around her. Owen scanned the room one last time, then softened his tone. "I want you all to understand that, starting today, things will change. No one at Everyday Save will ever feel invisible again. I will personally ensure that happens." His gaze found Jasmine's, filled with genuine resolve. "Jasmine, thank you for helping me see my mistake. Because of you, I understand that Everyday Save must change at its very core, and that journey starts today." Jasmine nodded, tears still rolling down her cheeks, but these were tears of hope and trust, knowing that from this moment on she would no longer be invisible. And Owen Grayson, the powerful CEO, would stand up for her and every other employee in the company. The air inside Everyday Save felt utterly still, every gaze fixed on Owen Grayson. His words still reverberated in everyone's minds, weighty yet brimming with hope. Jasmine stood frozen, her heart pounding as she stared in astonishment at the man she never expected to see here, and certainly never imagined would stand up and sincerely own his mistake. Owen stepped one pace closer to Jasmine, his eyes gentle, yet carrying the deep pain of someone who fully owns his responsibility. In a calm but resolute voice, he said, "Jasmine, I want to personally apologize to you for everything you've endured. The flexible scheduling policy, which seemed like a useful tool, has actually caused you, and many others, great hardship. And I am the one who signed that policy into effect." Jasmine's eyes went wide, her lips trembling, unable to speak. For a moment her heart stopped, as she realized the man before her was the very janitor who quietly listened to her tears in that dark corner a few days ago. The powerful CEO had disguised himself as an ordinary employee to truly understand her pain. "You know," Owen continued, his voice catching with emotion, "I witnessed you break down in tears behind the register when you got the eviction notice. I heard every word you whispered, that you felt nobody cared, that you were completely invisible in this system. Those words woke me up, made me see that I had created an inhumane system, one that hurt devoted people like you." Jasmine raised a shaking hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe that, out of thousands of employees in this company, the CEO was the first person to really see her hidden suffering. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she found herself speechless. All around them, employees were just as stunned. They exchanged amazed glances, then watched as deep respect and emotion spread among them. For the first time ever, they witnessed the company's most powerful leader humbly bow his head, admit his error, and offer a heartfelt apology to a simple checkout clerk. None of them had ever believed they'd see this moment. "I know no apology can erase what you've suffered," Owen said, his voice strong and determined, "but I promise you that from today forward, I will do everything in my power to ensure no one else here endures what you have. We will build a new work environment where every employee is seen, heard, and respected." Behind him, Linda Martin stood silent, her face ashen, lips pressed tight, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Jeffrey Collins, the regional manager, bowed his head, fear and responsibility etched into every muscle. The other employees felt the magnitude of this moment, a turning point in Everyday Save's history. Owen gently placed his hand on Jasmine's shoulder, a gesture of genuine empathy and respect that warmed her more than anything. He looked into her eyes and said earnestly, "Thank you, Jasmine. Your strength helped me recognize my mistake. You've shown me that true success can't be measured by numbers on a balance sheet, but by the kindness and fairness we extend to every person." The store seemed filled with a new emotion, a powerful blend of trust, respect, and hope. Jasmine nodded, tears still flowing, but now a real, relieved smile graced her face, proof that a tremendous burden had been lifted from her shoulders. "Mr. Grayson," Jasmine finally whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I don't know what else to say except thank you from the bottom of my heart. What you've done today, I never imagined it. I just hope that from now on, no one else in this company will have to suffer as I did." Owen nodded firmly. "I promise you, Jasmine, from today on, everything will change. I will personally ensure that every employee is treated with the utmost fairness and humanity." Soft but heartfelt applause began, growing until the entire store echoed with it. Employees gathered around Jasmine and Owen. Many moved to tears. No one would ever forget this moment. The moment the company's most powerful leader dared to bow, apologize, and commit to change for the sake of its most vulnerable workers. In that instant, Owen knew he had done the right thing, even though it was only the first step. He understood that his and Everyday Save's journey of transformation was just beginning, but he was ready, because he had finally grasped what truly mattered. People must always come before numbers or profits, and he was prepared to dedicate his life to defending that principle. The applause inside Everyday Save had just died down when Mr. Michael Owens, the local manager who'd been silent up to that point, cleared his throat, breaking the charged silence. "Mr. Grayson," he began, trying to sound calm and confident, "I appreciate your good intentions, but you have to understand that the flexible scheduling policy wasn't adopted on a whim. We run a large business, and efficiency and profit are paramount." He stepped forward, holding a stack of charts and performance statistics. His voice grew louder as he surveyed the store. Since we implemented this policy, the store's overall productivity has jumped by 30%, operating costs have dropped significantly, and management efficiency has improved markedly. I don't think we can throw away these gains for a few exceptional cases like Jasmine's. Tension snapped back into the room. Employees exchanged worried glances. Jasmine felt her heart tighten and looked down, as if she'd slipped back into invisibility. Then Owen spoke up, his tone firm and powerful, each word a sharp blade cutting through the old system's indifference. Mr. Owens, that's precisely the problem. Our obsession with numbers, profit, and productivity has turned our employees into soulless figures instead of treating them as human beings. Jasmine isn't an exception. She's the clearest evidence that this system is fundamentally broken. Mr. Owens' face went pale, a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes, but he squared his shoulders and replied, "Sir, I'm just following the policy the company set. We can't make too many individual exceptions, or the company will lose its efficiency and discipline." Owen fixed him with a cold, commanding stare. Efficiency? Then look at the consequences you call efficiency. Have you ever looked into the eyes of the employees whose hours you've cut? Have you ever witnessed their desperation when they can't pay rent, or when they lose a loved one yet still worry about being labeled inflexible? Mr. Owens, if your so-called efficiency is built on the suffering and tears of your employees, then it is no efficiency at all. It is inhumanity. Mr. Owens fell silent, stunned that the CEO would react so strongly to what he thought were airtight arguments. The surrounding staff looked at him with a mix of disappointment and anger. He found himself isolated in the crowd. Owen then addressed everyone, his voice softening but still carrying weight. That is why, effective immediately, I am abolishing the flexible scheduling policy. From today on, any changes to an employee's hours will no longer be decided by an automated system, but by direct managers who will take into account humanity, fairness, and each individual's circumstances. I want everyone here to understand that we are not just here to generate profit. We are here to build a humane, fair workplace. The store erupted into heartfelt applause. This time, the applause was overwhelming. Many employees were moved to tears, feeling for the first time truly seen and supported by their highest leader. Jasmine stood, tears still glistening on her cheeks, as co-workers came forward with genuine hugs and words of comfort. Linda Martin remained in a distant corner, her face etched with regret, as though she'd just realized how deeply her cold indifference had hurt Jasmine and so many others. An older colleague approached Jasmine, gently taking her hand. "Jasmine, we all admire your courage. If you hadn't shared your story, none of us would have had the strength to speak up. Now, everything will change." Jasmine looked around at her co-workers, warmth and gratitude flooding her heart. For the first time after months of despair, she knew she wasn't alone. At the very moment she was enduring the greatest pain of her life, she finally received the empathy and support she had thought she'd always have to face alone. Owen watched the scene unfold, his own heart feeling lighter than it had in years. He knew the battle against a heartless system would be long, but now he had a powerful motivation to press on. He would face every obstacle to protect employees like Jasmine, ensuring that Everyday Save truly became a place where compassion and fairness always came first. Because Owen Grayson understood at last that a successful company must never trade human dignity for soulless profit, and he was ready to use every ounce of his power and energy to defend and rebuild that principle, starting today. As the final rounds of applause quieted, Owen stepped closer to Jasmine once more, his expression warmer and more trusting than before. In his hand, he held a small plaque, simply designed but unmistakably solemn. All eyes in the store turned toward them, the air thick with hopeful anticipation. Owen gently placed the plaque into Jasmine's hands and spoke, his voice clear and resolute so everyone could hear. "Jasmine, I want you to be the very first person to display this plaque here at Everyday Save. This is my official commitment, not just to you, but to every employee in this company. We will never forget that this workplace exists for people first, not for machines." Trembling, Jasmine accepted the plaque and read aloud the inscription, each word etched with sincerity and strength. "This is a workplace for people. Every employee here is heard, respected, and protected." Tears of joy coursed down Jasmine's cheeks, but these were not tears of despair or loneliness. They were tears of liberation and fierce hope, marking the start of an entirely new chapter in her life. "I'll place it right by the entrance," Jasmine said softly, her voice quavering with emotion, "so that everyone who walks in knows what we stand for." Her co-workers erupted into applause once more, their smiles brighter and more genuine than ever before. For the first time in a long while, they truly felt that positive change was underway, driven by their highest leader's most powerful promise. While her colleagues celebrated, Jasmine carried the plaque to the front door. She carefully set it in its proud spot, and the store burst into enthusiastic applause again. One by one, employees came forward to thank and embrace her, their renewed camaraderie dispelling the gloom of past months. Even those who had once endured the cold policy in silence now stepped forward to share private struggles they'd never dared voice before. Mrs. Margaret, a long-time employee, took Jasmine's hand and said through tears, "Thank you, Jasmine. If you hadn't had the courage to speak up, we might never have seen this day. I had been thinking of quitting under all that pressure, but now I truly want to stay and keep giving my best." Overcome with gratitude, Jasmine could only grip Margaret's hand tightly, her heart swelling with pride and belief that, from this day on, she was part of building a kinder, more humane workplace where everyone was heard and respected. From across the store, Linda Martin watched in silence, her face drawn with remorse as she realized how deeply her own coldness had hurt colleagues she once saw only as numbers. Now she understood she must change, not just to survive in this new environment, but to reclaim the humanity she had long since lost. Nearby, Michael Owens and Jeffrey Collins stood bowed in recognition that the era of ruling by soulless statistics had truly ended. The atmosphere had transformed completely. Employees who once lived in fear and stress now greeted each other like family. Support flowed freely. No one hid their personal struggles anymore, and genuine laughter and friendly banter filled the aisles, erasing the shadow of the past. For Jasmine, today was a true new beginning. Not just a fresh start at work, but the start of a new life in which she would never again feel invisible or afraid. It was Owen Grayson, the company's most powerful CEO, who had given her this chance, and she vowed never to waste it. Gratitude filled her heart, bolstered by a newfound sense of responsibility, to uphold this spirit, to protect the newly restored values of humanity, and to be the voice of this humane revolution at Everyday Save. In that moment, Jasmine knew she was no longer just a humble cashier. She was now a crucial part of a great change, one sparked by Owen Grayson's sincere promise that from this day forward, this place would always be a workplace for people. That evening, after Everyday Save had closed and the staff had departed in indescribable joy, Owen returned to his office at corporate headquarters. The room was silent, bathed in the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the workspace where he sat in quiet reflection. Tiredness still lingered on his face, but his eyes burned with a resolve unlike anything he'd felt before. He drew in a deep breath, opened his familiar laptop, and began typing the letter he knew would shake the entire company to its core. His fingers flew over the keyboard, each line emerging strong, clear, and heartfelt. To all employees of Everyday Save, I write this letter with the utmost sincerity and seriousness. Over the past days, I have had the opportunity to witness and personally hear the stories of the people who work at the very company I once proudly built. The truth I've discovered is hard to stomach. We have inadvertently caused deep harm to many employees through policies we believed effective. I was the one who approved the flexible scheduling policy, and I fully acknowledge the grave mistake I made. Although created with good intentions, in reality it has become a cold, ruthless instrument that has inflicted pain, pressure, and despair upon loyal workers, pain that none of us should ever have to endure. Owen paused, the image of Jasmine's silent tears still fresh in his mind, then pressed on, his tone growing ever more determined. I once believed that focusing solely on efficiency, profit, and the attractive figures on our financial reports would guarantee our company's growth. But now I understand that true success can never be measured by soulless numbers alone. Real success comes from fostering a workplace that is kind and humane, where every employee feels heard, respected, and protected. Therefore, I pledge to all of you that, effective immediately, Everyday Save will undergo a root and branch transformation. Harmful old policies will be abolished at once. All decisions regarding staffing and schedules will be made thoughtfully by people, not cold algorithms. We will rebuild our corporate culture so that empathy, compassion, and fairness are always our top priorities. He paused again, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. He knew this letter would provoke resistance. Some in senior leadership would balk, clinging to profit and metrics above all else. But he no longer feared them. He understood more clearly than ever what was right. Taking another steadying breath, he concluded with the most heartfelt words he could summon. I owe my deepest thanks to Jasmine Brooks, whose courage helped me recognize the greatest error of my leadership. Her story has shown me that a company can only truly succeed when its leaders put people above all else. I believe Everyday Save will not only overcome this difficult chapter, but will stand as a beacon of humanity and fairness in the workplace. Together, we will build that future, and I am honored to stand alongside all of you on this vital journey. With all sincerity, Owen Grayson, CEO, Everyday Save. Without hesitation, he hit send, dispatching the letter company wide. Within minutes, it was in the inboxes of thousands, from senior executives to frontline workers. Leaning back in his chair, Owen closed his eyes and let out a long exhale, a mix of relief and anticipation coursing through him. Tomorrow would bring difficult meetings and fierce opposition, but he was resolved not to turn back. He had made a promise to Jasmine, to himself, and to every employee of Everyday Save, that from now on, kindness and compassion would always come first, and he would do whatever it took to keep that promise. The powerful commitments in Owen's letter spread rapidly throughout the company, bringing a wave of hope to every Everyday Save employee. On the very first morning after the letter was sent, Jasmine walked into the store in an entirely different frame of mind. She felt every warm glance and every encouraging nod from her coworkers, confirming that her experience had truly sparked a revolution within the same company where she once felt invisible. A few days later, an official announcement came down from headquarters. Jasmine Brooks would be appointed to lead a new special team called Voice First, a team created to review, assess, and propose human resources policies based on employees' real perspectives. The ceremony unveiling Jasmine's appointment was held right in her store, attended by a large crowd of employees and customers. Owen himself came to participate, took the podium, and explained why he chose her. I appoint Jasmine Brooks as head of the Voice First team because she is the clearest proof that every employee, no matter their position, deserves to be heard. Her story has awakened both me and our entire management system. I trust that with Jasmine leading, this team will ensure our company never again repeats the mistake of ignoring the voices of the most vulnerable. Owen's words were met with thunderous applause. When Jasmine stepped up, her eyes shone with pride and emotion. She took the microphone, drew a deep breath, and spoke in the most powerful, clear voice she had ever used. I accept this position with deep gratitude and a strong sense of responsibility. I pledge to always listen and do everything I can to protect the rights of every worker in this company. I understand well the feelings of those who have been abandoned, who have felt invisible and alone. From this moment on, I promise that no one at Everyday Save will ever have to endure that again. Instantly, the store erupted into even louder applause. Employees came forward to congratulate her and show their unwavering support. Regular customers joined in, expressing admiration and pledging to continue supporting the store for its newly affirmed human-centered values. In the days that followed, the Voice First team became fully operational. Jasmine worked tirelessly, organizing open meetings in the break room where every employee could freely share their opinions, challenges, and suggestions. No one had to suffer in silence anymore. People began to open up, sharing stories they had once kept hidden. Meanwhile, in the management office, Michael Owens and Linda Martin were forced to overhaul their leadership styles. Michael Owens, who had vehemently opposed the changes at first, gradually admitted that his previous approach was wrong. In a meeting with Jasmine and her team, he formally apologized for the harm his policies had caused, something he never imagined he would have to do just weeks earlier. Linda Martin underwent the deepest transformation of her managerial career. One day, she approached Jasmine with a genuine, earnest expression and said, "I've spent my whole life managing in the way I thought was most efficient, but now I realize I forgot the most important thing. Employees are human beings, not data points. I am truly sorry to you and everyone I have hurt." Jasmine responded with a heartfelt hug, offering forgiveness and faith in people's capacity for change. From that moment on, Linda became one of the strongest advocates for the store's renewal, actively participating in Jasmine's team meetings and offering her full support. Under Jasmine's leadership, the Voice First team quickly implemented meaningful reforms. New policies emerged, more humane and flexible, always prioritizing fairness, compassion, and understanding each employee's personal circumstances. Trust in the company was restored, and employees worked with renewed enthusiasm. The positive shift in the workplace was so noticeable that customers sensed it too, and the number of loyal patrons rose sharply. Jasmine herself, once a desperate, isolated cashier, had become a living symbol of hope and change. Her story spread not only within the company, but throughout the community. Shoppers often asked for her by name, wanting to meet the woman who had helped transform the face of the famous supermarket chain. Throughout it all, Owen quietly monitored Jasmine and her team's progress. He frequently sent encouraging emails and vigorously backed their initiatives. He knew the fight against a cold, unjust system would be long. But now he had Jasmine, and those once silent voices were stronger and clearer than ever. Owen understood that it was precisely the voices once forgotten, like Jasmine's, that had truly revived his company from within. He vowed to stand by her, ensuring that from now on, Everyday Save would always be a place where every person, no matter how small, is heard and valued just as they deserve. Over time, the changes Owen promised didn't just stay on paper, they became woven into the very culture of the company. Months later, Everyday Save looked and felt completely transformed, not only in its management style, but in the spirit of every employee. The stores were now filled with laughter, genuine smiles that had once been rare during those high-pressure shifts. The rate of staff turnover fell sharply, while employee satisfaction and loyalty climbed. Internal surveys showed that employees deeply believed in the new values the company pursued, and customers responded more positively than ever. Owen watched these developments with profound pride and gratitude, knowing that every one of these successes stemmed from the persistence and courage of people like Jasmine Brooks, voices that had once been faint but now rang loud and clear. Owen no longer ran the company like a cold, mechanical CEO. Instead, he began visiting stores in person each week, no longer incognito, but openly as the company's leader. And he didn't come to inspect sales figures or metrics. He came to listen, to have genuine conversations with every employee and manager, to learn about their lives, their challenges, and their true aspirations. One day, Owen returned to the very first store where Jasmine had worked, the birthplace of the company's humane revolution. The moment he walked in, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. Employees no longer hesitated at the sight of their powerful CEO. Instead, they greeted him with heartfelt smiles and friendly hellos. Owen made his way to the checkout area, where Jasmine was training a new hire. When she saw him, her face lit up with a radiant smile. Gone were the apprehension and fear, replaced by the confidence and immense pride she felt for the leader who had changed her life. "Mr. Grayson, are you visiting our store again today?" Jasmine asked cheerfully. Owen returned her smile warmly. "I came to check in on everyone, and of course to see how your Voice First team is doing. I heard you've been generating some fantastic suggestions here." "Yes," Jasmine replied proudly. "We've received so many new ideas from our colleagues and we're doing our best to help everyone feel comfortable at work." Owen nodded gently. "I'm very proud of what you and your team have accomplished. Thanks to you, Everyday Save has truly become a workplace for people, a place where everyone is heard." Jasmine paused, tears of gratitude glistening in her eyes as she recalled her humble dream, to be seen, to be heard, to be treated like a real person. Now, that small dream had not only come true for her, but had spread widely, giving thousands of other employees a workplace that was kind and humane. "Mr. Grayson," Jasmine said softly, her voice trembling, "I never imagined I'd one day stand here and talk to you so openly. None of this would have happened without you listening to my story." Owen looked at her with the gentlest sincerity. "No, Jasmine, I'm the one who should thank you. It was your courage in speaking up that woke me to the biggest mistake of my leadership. You helped me realize that leadership isn't just about managing work. It's about leading with your heart, showing compassion and understanding." Jasmine nodded, tears flowing now freely. She knew that the man before her was not just a powerful CEO but a leader of true humanity, ready to defend what was right, even when it challenged him and drew resistance. All around them, the store's employees took in this touching scene. They said nothing, but everyone understood its significance. They felt deeply fortunate to work for a company that placed human dignity first, where leadership truly listened, empathized, and even owned up to its mistakes. In that moment, Owen looked around once more, his eyes full of gratitude and pride. He had rediscovered himself, not as a detached CEO focused solely on charts, but as a compassionate leader who put people above all else, and Owen knew that his journey wasn't over. He would continue visiting every store, listening to every small story, every quiet dream, to make sure that no employee in his company would ever feel invisible again. For Jasmine, today was living proof that even the smallest dream can become reality, if only someone is willing to listen and understand. She looked at Owen, the most powerful man in the company, now also its emblem of kindness and decency that she had longed for. And in her heart, she held a stronger belief than ever. As long as Everyday Save is led by a kind heart like Owen Grayson's, it will always be a place for people, where even the faintest voice is revived and honored with genuine empathy and care. Jasmine and Owen's story isn't just about restoring humanity to the workplace. It's a profound reminder that everyone deserves to be heard, respected, and seen as a real person. Sometimes, it only takes one leader willing to bend down and listen to change countless lives forever. What about you? Have you ever felt invisible at work? Share your story in the comments below so we can listen and spread compassion together. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, share, and subscribe to follow more inspiring tales. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next video.